The topic of partnerships, what are pharma and big biotech looking for in the 2011 and sometime afterward climate, certainly it's an evolving issue. The economy, the tightness of money, and also a number of other kinds of changes in the industry may be changing what they're looking for. We'll be asking the panelists to talk about what their portfolio strategies are, how they look for new opportunities. Do we have Dr. Lindeval also? Maybe he's not here quite yet. So a wide range certainly have been used. One of the hallmarks of biotechnology and biomedical, which I certainly include the large companies in as well as the smaller, has been creativity. We've had R&D partnerships, sponsored research agreements, joint ventures, in-licenses, out-licenses, co-development agreements, sponsored research agreements, sales of technology and candidates, agreements that are structured according to territory, platform technologies, limited field of use agreements, an enormous range of opportunities. And then, of course, the therapeutic areas or the prophylactic areas, the nature of the products differ by the portfolios. So we'll be asking panelists to really help us understand the evolution of their interests and how we work together. And with 5 panelists, I don't want to spend a lot of time reading through everyone's bio. You have them in your materials from the conference. Just say a little bit about each of us. For my part, all I wanted to highlight here is that over the years, I've done things from being research director for a 90-year-old vaccines company, medical director for a 27,000-person pharma company, and created and grown 3 biotech companies. So both sides of that equation. Our panelists today are Dr. Alan Jarvis. Alan has a long and distinguished career in business and corporate development, having created biotechs, been an executive principal, as well as handling strategy and business development for larger companies. Dr. Joyce Pei, I don't know if I pronounced that right, the Director of Global Business Development at Roche. And I'm going to ask each of the panelists both to talk a little bit more about their background and maybe some opening comments about the focuses of their business and their approach to licensing and partnerships. Dr. Jeffrey Ulmer, Global Head of External Research for Novartis, Vaccines and Diagnostics. Dr. Michael Robinson, Senior Director of Franchise Licensing, Integrator for Vaccines and Infectious Disease at Merck Research Labs. And when we identify him and get him up front here, we'll also have Dr. Kai Lindeval, who's President and Chief Executive Officer of Inform Group. So with those very brief introductions, maybe we'll start on this end. And Michael, ask you to talk a little bit more about your background and orientation on Merck's approach and interests.
Sure. Thank you very much, and it's a real pleasure to be here. So I'm at Merck. We're a large vaccine developer. I spent most of my time there. I've been there 13 years now. And most of my time I was actually in our clinical research group working on both small molecule infectious disease products and also on our vaccines. I spent most of my time actually working on our HIV vaccine program. So those of you that are familiar with our HIV vaccine program, I was the clinical lead on that and ran our proof of concept trial with that vaccine program. And then about a year ago, I moved into our licensing group. And my responsibilities are really to cover both small molecule infectious diseases and also vaccines. Reviewing, I kind of serve as the initial scientific reviewer for any potential licensing opportunities in that space that we would look at. And just kind of in general how the process works at Merck, if I could just spend a minute going into that. We have a very, what we hope to be a very comprehensive program looking for potential licensing or partnering opportunities. Each of the therapeutic areas has someone like me that is called the Franchise Licensing Integrator, or the FLI. We love these great acronyms. So I'm the FLI for infectious diseases and vaccines. And oncology, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, each of those areas has someone that is, has at least some expertise in that area to serve as the reviewer. So we also have geographically based scouts. So we have scouts in several of the major areas where there are many biotech companies and a lot of academic centers. So we have a scout in Boston, we have one in San Diego, San Francisco. We have 3 in Europe, in different areas in Europe. We have one in Australia that covers the Asia Pacific region, one in Shanghai, one in India. So we have these scouts really all around the world, and they cover all therapeutic areas, but their goal is to really go out and proactively meet with different companies or academic groups to identify new opportunities. So we have this both active search that we do, and then also people can go to our website. We have on the main Merck website, there's a licensing subsection, and we have our posted areas of interest there for each therapeutic area. And we also try to make it so that it's not just what we're interested in, but also what we're not interested in, so that people try to have a better idea of what it is that we're really looking for. And then I think the third way that we get opportunities is just through opportunities like this, and we view these as very important. It's a good way to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on. So we try to send people to as many conferences that we can, just so that we are aware of what's going on in the field. So we try to have a fairly comprehensive approach in looking for opportunities, and have a fairly rigorous way of evaluating those to determine if they're ones that we are interested in or not. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how we do it at Merck for looking for opportunities.
That's great. Thank you very much for the insight into Merck's approach. As we go down to the other panelists, I'd like you to also characterize your approach to it, but maybe add some comments on how you might handle some aspects of it differently, and look at the range of approaches. Jeff, could you tell us a bit about yourself and about Novartis?
Well, thank you, Lance. I'm a biochemist by training, and have spent my entire career pretty much in the discovery research end of things, very far upstream. Started out at Merck Research Labs in Pennsylvania, and went to Chiron from there in the late 90s, and came into Novartis through the acquisition of Chiron. At the time of the acquisition, our business development and licensing group was all of the activities for scouting and assessment were done by that group. At the time that Novartis moved vaccines research from California to Massachusetts, we decided to create a new organization that had 3 separate parts to it. External research, which is the part of the company that I am responsible for, is more of the upstream discovery part of looking for opportunities and relationships. Business development retains the lead on structuring the deals and getting the documents signed. And then we have a third group called Research Strategy and Operations that takes more of the strategic alliance function to manage the ongoing relationships, make sure the deliverables are met. So for my part, we have always been, perhaps it's part of our biotech heritage, but we've always placed a very high premium on high impact, high quality collaborations to solve problems. And we realized quite some time ago with a small biotech organization that there was no way we would be able to do everything inside. So we've always been on the lookout for opportunities, particularly where we have already identified a gap or a technology problem where we need to have a solution. We seek best people in the field to provide that solution. And maybe a good current example of that would be the meningitis B vaccine, where at the time, which was in the late 90s, everyone was struggling with how do we solve this problem. And so when it became possible to sequence a genome, we struck a collaboration with Craig Venter and his institute to sequence the genome. and use that as a new paradigm for how to generate a vaccine based on a different way of looking at selecting the antigens out of the pathogen. And so that's been a very, very fruitful way of realizing we have a problem, seeking the best person out there to provide that solution, and then collaborating and creating a win-win scenario where both parties in the end come out winners. So that's our overall philosophy on
So I think I'm hearing a fairly high degree of targeting from the first two panelists of identifying your objectives in your areas, and then slightly different approaches to how do you sort through it all and come up with it. Joyce, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Roche's approach?
So my background is maternal.
No, it's on.
Can you
Try
hear me
it.
now?
Yeah.
It's better. Okay, so I'm Joyce Pei, so my job is Global Business Development Director. So my area is oncology. So in Roche, we have 5 therapeutic areas that are of interest to us. So in Nutley, we have oncology, we have inflammation, we have virology, and in Basel, we have CNS and also metabolics. So these are the areas of interest to us, and those are the areas that we have finders or scouts, like pretty much like what Mike was talking about. We have scouts and finders, but the scouts and finders are centrally located, so we don't really have that many regions, but for China and for Japan, we do have local offices that would help us with finding and scouting, but otherwise things are done centrally. So the finders and scouts will go out to biopartner meetings, to international conferences. We also do the landscape screening and looking out press releases, everything we can. Networking is very important. Networking, because I've been in the BD business for 9 years. So networking is very important. So I would be able to get opportunities from my relationship that I built over so many years with the biotech companies and academic institutions to get that. So I would say out of all my opportunities I'll be looking at, I would say good 60% of that is from networking. So in essence, also that the important thing I think with Roche is that we have a pharmaceutical division. We also have a diagnostic division. So we are really into thinking about personalized healthcare, meaning that you will select the patients the most likely to benefit from your drug. A good example of that is the BRAF with Plasticon, that you would select the V600E mutation, and those patients will get treated, and you get a tremendous results. And we're likely to file the NDA by this year. So that's very important to us, is that whenever we look at opportunities, we always want to look in with the target and how the target is modulated in small molecule or monoclonal antibodies to make sure that there's a certain way we can identify patients that most likely would benefit from the drugs. And also I want to talk about a little bit about Genentech. I think that maybe people may have questions about that. So we privatized Genentech 2 years ago. So we have 2 research organizations. One is the Roche Research and Early Development Organization, and the other one is the Genentech Research and Early Development Organization. And there are 2 organizations. The reason we want to keep it that way is because then we have a diversity of approaches. Because innovation happens everywhere, we want to make sure that the innovations are intact. So Roche Pharma Partnering, we serve the Roche Research and Early Development Organization, and Genentech Partnering serves the Genentech Research and Early Development Organization. But we talk to each other all the time. We have something called the point of contact. We make sure that, if one organization looking at something, the other organization will know about it, so there's no confusion to the parties. But anything beyond proof of concept, then the Roche partnering will take the lead. So that's how we do deals, and it's working out very nicely.
Okay. Thank you. Alan, could you tell us a little bit about the whole corporate and business development and Sanofi's approaches?
We have a company that's structured so that the vaccine division is a separate division, so it's fully integrated. We're dedicated essentially to infectious disease vaccines. Our parent company, Sanofi Venus Group, is also interested in vaccines in other spaces such as oncology, CNS, diabetes, things like that. All places where vaccine technology can be leveraged. We have, in terms of looking at new opportunities, we have sort of a separation of church and state, which when I first came to Sanofi from Wyeth, I thought looked a little bit strange. but I've come to love it. It's one where the opportunities are actually evaluated by a group that we call External R&D, a group that's led by Jeff Allman, and he spends his time between Cambridge, Massachusetts and Lyon, France. This group is about 20 people, and they are the scouts that were referred to earlier during the introductions. And they take a look at the technology, they assess it, they get market input, they get commercial input, they get manufacturing input and development, and then they present the opportunities to the organization. And the organization takes a look at the opportunities, and if they feel that they're worth pursuing, then it comes to the corporate development group, excuse me, which is a group that I used to run for Sanofi Pasteur. And that group is responsible for putting transactions together. The benefit, and I'm probably spending more time on this than I really should, but the benefit is that the emotion that goes into putting the transaction together, oftentimes between business BD groups in two partner companies, is a little bit short-circuited here, in that the emotion can be with the organization that decides in terms of whether they actually want to work with the technology or not, but the transactional side is done by people that take something that's coming from the organization where they say, yes, this is something that I want to do, and you work straight from those facts. So you're more interested in the NPVs and the final end results. Not that the partnership and the representation between the people is not important. I'm a strong believer that what gets things to the finish line is people, and not what you write down on paper. But it's a very effective and I think a very useful process that we have for screening applications, and we are always interested in talking to people about new applications.
Great. Thank you. Did Dr. Lindeval join the group? Could you come up, please, sir? Dr. Lindeval is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Incorum Group. Dr. Lindeval, what we're asking the panelists to do is to sort of identify themselves and their backgrounds and then talk about their company and its approach to partnerships. How do you identify them? Where do you look? And if there are sort of strategic issues, any comments you might have?
Yes, my name is Kai Lindeval. I'm the CEO of Incorum Group, Inc. This is a CRO company that was established in 1996. Today we cover mostly Europe, Latin America, and India. We have from the very beginning been involved in kind of partnership relationships to big pharma and smaller biotech companies as well. And what has happened during these years is that the CRO industry has become an integral part of drug development. However, it seems to me that this has not quite been reflected in the ways and structures how pharma is working with the CRO companies. Because it's pretty clear to me that only a kind of partnership attitude, if you like, that we are dealing with common success and common projects is the success basis for the success in drug development. When it comes to biotech companies, it's quite clear and obvious that only a partnership type of thinking will be successful. We have been dealing quite a lot with the kind of commodity approach between the pharma industry and CROs. However, if you think about that, the paradigm has really changed now. The industry has gone over from tactic partnering, outsourcing, to strategic outsourcing. And that should be reflected in the relationship as well, which I don't think it really is today. In the long run, it's quite clear to me that the CRO industry needs also to be looked at a partner who can give intellectual input into the development process. Mm-hmm. And it means, of course, that the CRO industry needs to change as well. And the CRO industry needs to take more responsibility of things that we can affect. And there needs to be, a clear understanding of what are the areas where we should take responsibility, the areas that we can affect, and also have a clearer upside in when we see success. If you look how we are evaluated by the big companies, the first step is always the RFI process, and that reflects quantitative measurements, very seldom qualitative measurements. Of course, because it's very difficult to do qualitative assessments. But and finally, if you think about how to measure the success of CRO performance, it boils down to the two most important variables: time and money. Mm-hmm. And if we look at some surveys on how the CRO industry has been performing, they seem to indicate that outsourcing may save time, which is the more important variable of these two. So these are the things I want to evoke here in discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I have one more broad topic that I want to ask the panelists, not necessarily in any order, to comment on, and then I'd like to look for questions that you in the audience have in mind, things you want to know from the major players in our field. So, and a word of warning, I've been known to call on individuals in the audience if I'm not getting enough questions there. So my broad question is the topic of externalization. How does it play in your organizations? What does it mean to you? What are you looking for in externalization? So far, I think we've focused to a significant degree on product opportunities or technology opportunities. But in externalization, it can be much more than that. Are you looking for complementary expertise? Are you looking for some of the unique attributes of entrepreneurial groups, risk takers? Are you looking for specialized technologies, groups to focus on that? What is externalization? How does that play in your organization as opposed to the linear internal? So I'll open it up to the panelists. Anybody that would like to lead off?
Well, I think all of the above of what you said there. I think it makes most sense to, when you strike a relationship with an outside party, to make sure that you both bring something significant to the table and that they are not just more of what you're already doing, because that doesn't really advance you that fast or more. So when we look for, first of all, we have to remain flexible to be both strategic and opportunistic. So if something presents itself that we hadn't thought of or weren't considering in the first year, we have to be flexible enough to make sure that we can assess it and create an opportunity to bring it in-house or collaborate. But more often than not, we do a gap analysis and decide what it is that we really need for our internal programs, and then seek the right relationship where they are bringing something, we're bringing something, and together we can do something that neither party can do alone.
I like the idea of the gap analysis, really looking at where the requirements of the program are and what strengths you have, and can you supplement those. So do you find yourself sometimes in a program that, whether the program originated internally or it was in-licensed, do you find yourself sometimes in that gap analysis saying, well, there's an exciting project, one we're committed to, we have 70% of what we need internally, and the partner has another 20% of everything we need. But do you find yourself sometimes identifying gaps, and that you have to actually go out and look, and you have to find people or groups or companies to provide that, whether it's a CRO or maybe it's a sequencing group or something else?
Maybe I can comment on that. So what we do at Roche is that for products, we would ask the disease area, the experts, oncology or virology, one of the 5 areas, to tell us, where are the targets that you want to seek. So each year, or once, maybe sometimes more, they will go through their targets. They say, okay, these are the targets that we're interested in. So for example, for oncology, we have 3 sites. We have Nutley, and that's their focus is apoptosis And we have Pennsburg, and they're focused on angiogenesis and also HER. And we have Schliering, which is our old glycar site, and their focus is cancer immunology. So they will tell us which targets they want, some of the target they're doing. If they have some targets, targets of interest, we can then see what's out there. For example, it's 2 years ahead, of course, we'll take a look. But other than that, sometimes they will tell us, these are the targets I want you to take a look, and these are the targets that will go early. Okay, like other targets that may be of not so much interest, then we'll go data-driven. So we'll make sure that they have some data, phase 1, maybe phase 2. But some of the targets that are of interest to the research folks will go very early, sometimes even before GLP. And technology-wise, we also have a technology and research group that they will look at technologies or formulation, things like that. So products will be pretty much focusing on what the disease area wants, and then for technology, we'll be complementing.
Okay. Other comments from panelists?
I think it's a really interesting situation that we're in now, and I think we're seeing a lot of changes, and I think all of the kind of large pharma, big vaccine developers are doing very similar things. I think at Merck, we used to always kind of do everything in-house. You know, we did all the internal discovery work, we did a lot of the bioprocess work and development, but I think we've realized that you know, we have some things that we're very good at, but there's a lot of interesting things going on outside. And so what we've tried to do is to focus really what our strategic interests are, what are the key targets that we want to do, what are the areas that we want to focus on. And if we have an internal discovery program that can find that, that's good, but if there's external parties that are doing this, we are branching out into that as well. And I think one of the key things that we've done in just the recent years is that it used to be that managing external partnerships was just something that the internal discovery people did on the side, or as, you know, kind of part of their job. So they might have an internal program, and then they might also be working with an external partner. And recently, in the last few years, we've actually set up a group specifically to deal with external research. And so these people, and again, they're in each of the therapeutic areas. You know, we have a couple of people in our vaccine group whose really their core job is to work with external parties. So there may be research collaborations, there may be discovery work, there may be, you know, even all the way up into early clinical stages, where most of the work is being done by an external party, but it's there's somebody internal that is part of that team and is managing that external relationship. And I think part of that is that we realize, you know, we're very good at certain things. So bioprocess is something that's very important for vaccines, and we have a lot of resources to do that. Clinical development, regulatory strategy, and commercialization, those are things that we all do very well. But I think more and more we're seeing a lot of the earlier work being done through external partnerships. And again, we don't do this just as saying, we're not like an NIH, we're not a funding agency that goes out and says, you know, tell us what your ideas are and we'll give you some money. We look at this as really what are things that are aligned with our own vision of where we want to go, what are our strategic interests, and how can we best accomplish that? Is that internally or externally? We're kind of agnostic, but if we're going to do it with an external partner, we want to make sure we dedicate those resources properly to it so that we're really maintaining that strong relationship. So I think it's, again, it seems similar to, I think, what Jeff and others are saying, that it may, I think the model is becoming more and more in that direction.
Alan, any additional comments?
Yeah, I think, I guess, either fortunately or unfortunately, I'm going to be aligned with everything that's been said so far. For us, it's all dependent on what the opportunity is. So if the opportunity presents itself in such a way that it happens to fit in or dovetail with expertise and capabilities that are currently established, then that's certainly a plus. But it's not a driver, it's only a plus. The driver really is what the opportunity is for the product, what the technical feasibility is for the product, what the market attractiveness is for the product. And based on this, we will design a program, whether it's totally external, or it's totally internal, or it's a combination of the two. And having said what I just said, I don't think I've ever seen a totally external program, Because one of the things that the larger companies specialize in is product development. So when you take things out of the discovery stage, you get to the point where you have a product candidate, you're ready to go through the pharmacology testing, you're ready to select your phase 1 candidates, you're ready to submit your INDs and get any regulatory speed. That's really where a lot of the larger companies shine. They know how to do product development. So at some point, it's going to fit into a stream that exists within the organization. But there's nothing about the way that we look at opportunities that says this is either highly complementary to what we do or not complementary to what we do. We look at the product opportunity on its own. We try to design the program that will fit the opportunity.
Great. Additional comments? Okay. Are there questions that the delegates have that you'd like to address at this point? Will be additional opportunity. Yeah, over here. And introduce yourself and your organization, please.
Thank you. I'm Tim Cook from Novodyne. I had a question about, since the Great Recession in mid-08, it's been a tough time for biotech companies, been a tough time for big pharma. And I just wondered if you have observed behavioral change during that time on the part of the smaller biotechs, or maybe their VCs, and in your own organizations, and whether it's a trend that seems to be continuing, or whether it's going to come back to where it was before '08.
I'll take a first shot at that. I think, the tough economic times has hit everybody, and I think what it's really made us really do, and we have a new CEO at Merck, Ken Frazier, just at the beginning of the year, took over as CEO. He had been very involved with Merck for many years, but he's really charged us that we have to really, really, really prioritize. And so I think where before we might have taken more risk on, we might have tried more things at early stages of development where the probability of technical success or regulatory success was a little bit lower. I think in many ways we've had to tighten that, raise that bar a little bit. And I think that applies to our internal programs as well as what we're looking for externally, is that we as a company have had to really, to use Ken's words, ruthlessly prioritize what we're doing. And so I think that's been a reflection of both the number of projects that we take on, and then also I think some of the things that we may partner outside with, we've had to kind of raise that bar a little bit. Now, will that change as times evolve? We all hope so, but I think it's a reality right now that everybody's had to tighten the belts quite a bit. I don't know what others' experience has been, but that's been our experience.
Well, whether it's a coincidence or not, one of the things I've noticed is there's been a higher frequency of seeking government funding in the form of grants and contracts. We've always been very active in this area dating back to the Chiron days, but it seems to be perhaps there's more opportunity to get certain types of funding for HIV, biodefense-related opportunities, et cetera. But we have engaged in a lot more grant funding to mitigate some of the financial risk, particularly for the higher risk endeavors that we might not fund internally ourselves. So it does two things. One, it creates an opportunity to work with an external partner, perhaps an academic institution or a biotech company that wouldn't have the resources themselves to provide the dollars for their own efforts. And then secondly, it creates also a win-win situation in certain ways with the government and the companies, where they can perhaps get access to technologies for their own interests that wouldn't align with the interests of the company. So over the last 5 years, we've seen a significant increase in government grants and contracts.
Do you find that you're able to align those public-private partnerships with the corporate interests of the partners, both government and NGOs?
So far, it's worked very well.
Yeah. Joyce?
Yeah, so at Roche, we see that many companies have started, looking at maybe non-core pharma business like eye or, for example, or like generics and so forth. We believe that innovation is key, and pharmaceutical with innovation. So we believe that with the pharma and also with the diagnostic, with personalized healthcare, we will be able to become the innovator. And what also is that recently we have the Genentech privatization. So now we have two, like I mentioned, two research organizations, but they each have their own priorities. So the one thing that we need to make sure is that the two organizations are working in concert. That's what's important. So for example, if something that Genentech has ongoing, like ADC, conjugates, then Roche may not want to do that. We may want to say, okay, conjugates, Genentech, like Curis and so forth. So that's something that we need to work out, is that with the resources and limited resources, and was also concentrating on innovation, really the partnering efforts really become very important to make sure that we bring in that innovation the company needs to go to the next step.
Any changes in your partnering approaches and with the current economy?
I think that everybody has pointed out that prioritizing projects is one of the most difficult exercises that most organizations go through. Some organizations go through it on an annual basis, some organizations go through it semi-annually, and some organizations are constantly reprioritizing. It's a necessary / disruptive exercise, in that there are already things that are started and initiated. One of the things that always, I can't really say boggles my mind, but bothers me in prioritization exercises is that you're basing your priorities in many cases on assumptions, because you don't have demonstration value. And so what goes into your calculations in terms of what your priorities should be is oftentimes not at the level that you would like to have it to make a crisp, clear decision, and yet you're still going to prioritize. I think some of the mechanisms that were discussed by some of the other respondents that had to do with outside funding and things like that is a good way to keep things viable until you can get clear proof of concept. But every organization, I think, is challenged by the kind of prioritization exercise that they have to go through. No one wants to turn away the asset that may be the next key to the next great $2 billion product. But unfortunately, I think most companies have a cloudy crystal ball with regard to actually understanding what products are going to be. It's easy to understand the potential. It's easy to understand what the technology does, but how it will actually deliver is a little bit of an enigma to at least to most of the companies that I've worked with.
Kai, as you said, the CROs are developing a new role and new partnerships. I'm sure, well, in fact, I know firsthand that a lot of times there are discussions between an innovator and the CRO where they're looking for different kind of partnerships.
This is a very important question. In the new role of the CRO industry, the implication is that looking at how well innovation or at the possibilities of likelihood of innovation becoming something that the end users, the patients, will get in a timely manner. For the first time, we can say that how well the CRO industry is performing will now also affect how innovations will become drugs. And that means, from our perspective also, that we have a more clear ethical sort of dimension into we are in the same sort of ethical domain as the pharma companies in that sense, and that's a great motivational factor for the CRO industry. Then when it comes to the question of different models and if they have changed, I would say that if the financial crisis has been brought anything good, it was a kind of good confirmation of the virtual model of biotechs, looking at all the problems that so many biotechs run into. It became quite apparent that you need to be as virtual as possible, and you need to use outsourcing as a model. And also what we discussed here, what the panel was talking about is that is of course valid for biotech companies as well, that you can't develop drugs in a very broad manner. You have to have a spearhead type of strategy as well.
Other questions? I don't want to dominate more than you'd like. Get a microphone back here, please.
Benny Daniels, Inside BioVentures. What explains pharma's resistance against breakthrough technologies? For instance, DNA or second-generation DNA. And I make a comparison or parallel. When Centocor was running around with knocking on every door with their infliximab, nobody answered. And there was one person in one company that said, well, we're not going to license in, but we're going to acquire the company. Now everybody's in monoclonal antibodies, so it took about 5, 6, 7 years before acceptance. It's a little bit provocative, but...
So you want to sort of focus that on a specific question that panelists might respond to?
Well, what is explaining the resistance to breakthrough technologies?
To breakthrough technologies, looking at things that are sort of outside the paradigm and the expected.
We're certainly not resistant to breakthrough technology.
Especially if they're blockbuster breakthroughs.
The example of DNA, if it worked, we would be in it full force. But so far, it's not looking like it's working as well as it need to be.
I mean, I agree. I mean, breakthrough innovations, basically your technology is key to, so for example, you know, in our case with Genentech with the monoclonal antibodies, you know, it was definitely a breakthrough. And then Roche was in early and continue. I mean, we believe, but then the thing is that what is the next monoclonal? You know,
right.
That's the question. So we are very aggressive in looking to breakthrough technologies, but I agree with Jeff, so far the DNA has not been our focus.
I think the challenge there, there was a lot of expectation that once we knew what the genome was, we'd immediately have a blueprint for products. And so far, the key to translating mountains of information into products hasn't really come out.
Yeah, and I mean, I would just echo what Jeff and Joyce has said. I mean, I think everybody's very open to breakthrough technologies. We're all looking for it. But I think also, you know, we also, I think, have to focus on getting a real product out there. I mean, our goal is to get new vaccines that are going to help people. And if there's breakthrough technology that allow us to do that, we certainly want to see it, and we don't want to miss good opportunities. But I think there's also, you know, the realization that most of these new technologies never really translate into new products. And so I think a key question for us, you know, in this whole field is, you know, for pharma looking where to get involved with this, you know, where do we invest? Where do we jump into this? Is it on cutting edge things that are very high risk but potentially high reward, or are they on more proven technologies? And I think that line is constantly moving. And I think, you know, we try to look at new technologies, but again, you know, we also have to think about, you know, what are the ones that are actually going to deliver a product that is really needed, and you know, so where do we put that investment? And I think that's the constant challenge that we're all faced with.
And I strongly suspect that what several of you said earlier about the rising bar on what deals you do, given the tighter budgets. You know, in more flush times, there might have been, you know, sort of exploratory partnerships and some funding to take a flyer on a high-risk technology. On tighter financial times, you probably need to focus more on things that have a higher probability of giving a near-term return.
And I think the specific example of, you know, DNA vaccines, I mean, Jeff knows this very well. He was very involved with our program at Merck, and then you know, we took DNA vaccines into the clinic, you know, both for, we had some early flu candidates and our HIV candidate. The immunogenicity in humans wasn't as good as what we'd seen with other vectors. Again, there's probably more technology constantly making improvements on that, and if it gets to the point where it looks like it would actually do something, we think we would all be very interested in it. But again, we have to really see what's going to translate into human vaccines. That's what our focus is.
So we have time maybe for one or two more topics. I want to ask one, though, that sort of keys off comments several of you have made. Kai, you talked about moving towards virtual. When I sort of opened the panel, I gave a little bit of a laundry list, a very short sample of the laundry list of the kinds of deals that have been and can be done. My question is, given the evolution of the industry, the evolution of relationships, the range of experience you've all had, and your organizations, and today's financial times, how do you structure the kinds of relationships? How do you guide those? And are you trying to move in one direction or another? To what extent are you looking to maximize the utility of your own internal resources, the more virtual of funding externally? Are you open generally to some structures more than others? So how is that evolving, and what are we currently looking at in the kinds of, not the targets, but rather the kinds of relationships between the external, whether it be an external CRO or contract manufacturer or a biotech company? How are those deals structures changing? Alan, maybe start with you.
Well, we're in a situation where we really don't have to worry about structuring things so that we optimize the use of our people, because our people right now are about 100% utilized on the projects that they're currently working on. So we're highly dependent at this point in time in some of the latest stage product development stages on CROs and CMOs. And without them, frankly, we wouldn't be able to advance the products that we're currently advancing. So it's not so much designed to fit the internal engine, so to speak, as it is designed based on the need for the product and what the product can deliver. And I was going to make a quick comment in response to the question about new technology and exciting new things. I've been around for a while. I started in the biotech industry in 1980, and at that point all you needed to do was to be able to talk well, have a good idea, and a gold-plated scientific advisory board, and everybody had to have a piece of it, okay? So everything was enabling, everything was new, and everything was the kind of thing that you couldn't let get away. I think the industry has come a long way in the past almost 40 years, a good 35 years. And it's gotten to the point where it has seen a lot of things that have been put forth as being the end-all, be-all, the panacea, the thing that's going to get you over the product development hump and put your product on the market. Some of them have turned out to be accurate, and some of them have not. So I think it's more now a matter of what has been demonstrated. You're seeing a lot more people ask questions about what does the proof of concept look like. Is it in humans? Is it in animals? How has it been constructed? What are your endpoints? What are you using to base this on? What are your comparators? And for that reason, it takes a little bit of the sizzle and snap, I think, out of new technology that comes along. It doesn't demean it and it doesn't decrease it. It simply puts a level of scrutiny on it that wasn't there 10, 20 years ago. So new technology will always be attractive to people because I think inherently as a species we like new things. And we'll always look at those things, but I think we've also been tempered by experience so that when the new thing comes along, you cast it against the other new things that you've seen which are comparable. So you have some kind of background. You've got some kind of database to draw from, and I think that helps in what I'd call data-driven decision-making.
Right. Other comments on changing structures and preferences? Sort of thinking also, and I like what I think Alan said. What I'm hearing, I think, is you are looking at what your internal resources, but you're looking at the resource base as both internal and external, and then how to deploy or structure the project to use the resources from wherever they are. Joyce?
Yeah, so with the CRO, CMO, that's usually the case that we do utilize them to do studies, and importantly, of course, the endpoints and what patient population, does it have a companion diagnostic, the diagnostic, in vitro diagnostic, the diagnostic, laboratory diagnostic, that's going to be important for Roche because we're thinking about personalized healthcare, and you have companion diagnostic, and also the pharmaceutical, for example, a good case would be BRAF for B600E mutation. So you would do the mutation first, and then patients who has mutation will get treated. So that's going to be important, is the personalized healthcare, the diagnostic piece, and also the pharma piece, so where there's a potential need there. One thing I want to say is that is a translational hub. We're very interested in translational medicine, how you translate from preclinical setting to early clinical setting. So as you know, we have a Singapore hub, and we're in the process of looking at additional hub. We have a Harvard hub. We may potentially do a New York hub. So that's something that Roche wanted to really kind of understand, is that the translational centers be able to help us understand how do you translate from preclinical to clinical, and what are the biomarkers that will be involved.
Additional comments on the topic?
I would just mention, and going back to the topic of innovation, I think we also have to be innovative in the type of deals and partnerships that we're looking at. So it's not just innovation at the science level, but I think that right now, I think we all, as a collective group, need to think, what can we do innovatively to advance concepts and products along? Again, I think there was a model 10 years ago that was, pretty cut and dry, but now I think we have to also be very open to innovations and partnerships. And I think because of difficult financial times that everybody's experiencing, we have to look at ways to share risk and share benefits. And I think that's another area of innovation that we're starting to see more. And again, it's a new space for a lot of us. I think we have to test out some of these things now to see how it best works. So I think that's another area of innovation that we have to really focus on.
And I certainly think, the comments that others have made on the role of sharing those risks, not just between the big pharma and the biotech, but also between those two parties and governments and NGOs, and those having a real interest in getting the products out there.
And also, to Kai's point, to the CROs too. I think
Right.
playing an active role in that. I think we all need to think about how we can best contribute to that. Also, where should we make our contributions? Where can we share the risks? I think again, there's going to be, I think over the next few years, there's going to be a lot of creative ways and seeing if any of these new partnerships work. We may find that some of them don't work, but I think it's an interesting time for that.
I think really interesting, what I'm hearing is there are real changes in how the internal-external relationships are, and I think it creates opportunities for everyone. Jeff?
I was just going to say, Joyce brought up translational sciences, and I think that relates to the technology discussion earlier. I think the bar is now higher when it comes to new technologies, and of course you can do some exploratory work upstream in animal models, but the sooner that we can understand how these things apply in large animals and humans in particular, and the DNA vaccine is a good example of that, where it looked, there was so much promise there based on the animal data, even large animal data, that didn't translate up into species. And I think we're still struggling a little bit what that species barrier is. And so I think the bar is higher now when it comes to new technologies. We need to get into those translational studies to understand quickly, fail faster if necessary.
Fail fast.
I think a good corollary of the basic rule that mice lie and monkeys don't always tell the truth. So let's look at what the real use and need for the products is. Well, I think we've about exhausted the available time for the panel discussion. I very much thank you. It was excellent, and I appreciate the questions that you've had also. So thank you.